Welcome to Staying Sweet, the podcast. Tune into my weekly podcast to hear me, Alice Bradley, delve deeper into building your personal brand, up-level your mindset and tap into your highest potential using what makes you, you, all while staying sweet, of course. Whether you're looking to level up within an existing business, start something of your own, or create a fulfilling, balanced and healthier lifestyle, each episode will be curated especially to inspire and encourage your own success. Plus, don't miss out on the Staying Sweet specials, a series of exclusive interviews and conversations with Alice's network of entrepreneurs and brand owners. Don't forget there are new episodes every Monday. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do leave a rate and review. For more daily content, check out @Staying Sweet Podcast over on Instagram. Stay sweet. Hey guys, and welcome back to Staying Sweet, the podcast. If you are new to the Staying Sweet community, welcome. I really hope you stay and enjoy this podcast. Have a little listen to my other episodes. Get yourself familiar with this space. I really hope this becomes part of your everyday routine or your weekly routine, and I really hope you enjoy the Staying Sweet community. Without further ado, really, I wanted this week's lovely episode to focus on some self-help books that have really changed my life this year. And I feel like when you talk about self-help and you admit to reading into the genre, I think a lot of people have misconceptions as to what you're going to expect from a self-help book. I think people think that you need to be in a particularly bad place in order to read one. It kind of gives that Bridget Jones energy sometimes. And let's just make this very, very clear. Bridget Jones is an icon in my eyes. And for me, I've always been invested and attracted to books in the self-development area and the self-improvement section of the bookstore. I'm always drawn to books in that area, and I really have never really seen it as a thing to be embarrassed about or to be picking up. You know, at the end of the day, all you can do in life is grow, learn and improve yourself. So really don't fear this section of the bookstore. I think this podcast episode is going to just give you some inspiration if you've either not really had much luck finding a self-help book that works for you, or perhaps it's a genre that you've not really tapped into. Like perhaps you do enjoy your fiction texts, and that's fine. But I really want this episode to give you an insight into two of my favorite books this year. One of which I honestly, every time I think about it or I tell others about it, it gives me the chills because it was so divinely led to me at a point when I really, really needed it. And I actually think one of these books, which I can't wait to just mention and talk about, guys, today, it honestly was the saving grace for me and completely and utterly pulled me out of such a dark place. So really, we've got to jump straight into this episode because I'm just itching to talk about this topic today, guys. Firstly, let's open up quickly with some updates on what's been going on in my world and my life. I feel like as we near the end of November and step into the last month of the year, which is December, guys, I just feel like it's, obviously a busy time. And I think this time of year really does ramp up our personal activities and our personal lives and our social lives. So just giving yourself the leeway to be like, do you know what, I'm just going to have this weekend to enjoy family and enjoy family time, which is what I've been doing lately. I'm really enjoying. It is hard to balance everything, and I'll be honest, I'll be the first person to admit and say it's really hard to strike that balance and to not feel stressed, because you can be enjoying like a really amazing moment and still be stressed about work. Like it happens to all of us, unfortunately. But yeah, I've just been really focusing on enjoying the moment. Also taking the time, guys, to just sit and do nothing sometimes in the evenings. Like it's so easy to think that we need to be, booked and busy in the evenings and going out and enjoying the festivities, which yes, we can do that, but we can also enjoy the moments at home to rejuvenate. It's hibernation season, guys. So yeah, I feel like I've just been really feeling that energy lately. and just unwinding in time for the holidays. So that's really been my focus over the last couple of weeks, getting myself back into a routine. And yeah, I just think this episode is going to be great for you if you are thinking about like your Christmas wish list, you want a new self-help book to indulge in and read and kind of unpick at, ready for the new year. Maybe you want to get a reading list together for 2023, in which case you've come to the right episode. Maybe you're listening to this in 2023 and you're starting your self-help journey now. And I really just want to welcome you in and say, you know, this is going to be the making of you. But yeah, today's quote for this episode is, I hope you allow yourself to meet you deeper than you have ever known before. And I really like this quote. I was called to it because I think when you give yourself the time to go on a deeper level and explore your shadows, explore your, you know, all the elements of yourself that maybe you don't access or maybe you want to hide. I think when you allow yourself the time and the vulnerability to say, do you know what, I'm going to look into this and do a deep dive, that is when you do tap in to a new version of yourself. You're unlearning, but you're also learning about yourself. It's a really interesting process. I think self-help does that genre really does work, and there's so many books that I have read in the self-help genre. I feel like if I was to sit and talk about them all, I would be here forever. I do want to know though, guys, if this episode does feel really good for you and really aligned, like I'd love for you to tell me, because I really, you know, hope to share more episodes with you featuring other books I've read with just an insight really into my experience. So we're going to talk about 2 books today, 2 very different books, but again, I feel like they do work hand in hand in the self-help genre. One is a lot about healing and childhood traumas, relationship patterns, healing your past. And the second book that I'm going to talk about is focusing on manifestation and, you know, how we can level up ourselves and attract a better life for ourselves. So we're going to dive into the deep stuff first. You know me, let's get the hard stuff done now. I'm going to talk to you about Becoming the One by Shalina Ayana. Now, I really hope I have pronounced her name right. I think it could be Shalina Ayana or Ayana. She's the founder of Rising Woman, and I found her, very early on in the Instagram days. I remember her doing basically these quotes, which she still does on her Rising Woman page. And I was really called and inspired by the way in which she wrote about spirituality and connected her power as a woman and as an individual as well to this extraordinary gift that is life. And I think she really encapsulates how to be a better person and how to understand yourself to your core and explore it, and not be scared to explore who you really are and where you've had those, you know, traumas in your life and how to overcome them. So yeah, essentially Becoming the One is a guide to the inner world of your life and your relationships. So relationships have the ability to infuse our lives with the magic of intimacy and connection, but often we find ourselves chasing things. And this is not just in love, but this is in, you know, all relationships in life, friendships, work commitments and relationships that we have, you know, with our co-workers and our boss. Basically just putting other people's needs before our own. And what I think this book really touched on for me was the importance of healing and not abandoning yourself in the pursuit of healing and knowing truly who you are. So she touched on this really, really important thing, which I found just shifted my whole perspective, which is that healing really is a privilege. And, you know, if we're able to do it, we should do it and we should heal, but we should also use our healed versions of ourselves to help other people. And in order to help others, you must feel, in a way, healed. And I love how she also reiterates this idea that societally we're deemed, you know, as damaged goods if we feel like we need to heal and work on ourselves. But actually, we can attract some of the best loves that way. You know, we can attract people who help us realign with who we need to be. We attract partners who are the most supportive and encouraging people in our lives and our biggest cheerleaders. So yeah, I think this book really is just a really incredible self-study, and it's all about, how to work on yourself, how to allow yourself the grace of learning about your traumas and your relationship habits and how to evolve them. She details this, and I quote because it's really, really interesting to me. It boils down to a culture of self-abandonment in the name of trying to find and keep love. And again, I read this book in the summer actually after dating someone very, very briefly, and I wasn't in a good place before I met that person, and after meeting them I was in an even worse place, and they weren't good for me. I don't think I was right for them. It just wasn't meant to be, and that's okay. But what this book led me to was this feeling that I am enough as myself. I don't need to self-abandon what I want in a relationship and what I want from someone and what I want to be in a relationship in the name of trying to keep a love that is not meant for me and so undeserving of, two people coming together and being in a relationship. This could really translate as well in business and in the relationships we cultivate with friendships and the people that are our inner circle. If we allow ourselves to self-abandon in the name of, keeping a friend in our life or keeping the dream job that we have, or, just being able to say, I have a boyfriend, or I'm engaged and I'm yet to be married. Do you know what I mean? I feel like in those instances, we try to prove our worth culturally versus actually just going, is this for me? Is this right? Does this reflect the person that I want to be? Am I actually valuing myself in this relationship? Am I valuing myself at this job? Do their morals align with my morals? Allowing yourself the courage to stand up and say, I will not self-abandon is hard to do. It really is, when everything that we do is under a microscope as it is. We're very physically out there. We're physically searchable. We're basically our own personal brands, whether we like it or not. But people have so much access to us now that we have to sometimes keep up with the Joneses in things that we don't want to do and things that we don't want to be. So I think this quote really hit me to my core. It's true for a lot of relationships in life, not just romantic. So yeah, often we find ourselves really blurring the lines and blurring our boundaries because we're scared to offend others, or we so desperately want to feel part of certain societies that we chase things that aren't good enough for us or aren't even on, our path and our path in life. There's also this really interesting focus on inherited family trauma, childhood trauma, and self-healing education. This book doesn't just throw things at you and say, this is a bit of, self-help jargon. It really ties in to how it reflects to you. And she doesn't just detail her personal, attachment styles or experiences. Obviously, she details that and she gives her anecdotes, but she weaves it with actual practices that you can go and do. In the moment, you can read through the criteria and say, which one aligns with me? Which one sounds like me? And the book is explorative in that sense. It doesn't leave you thinking, well, I've read it now, what do I do next? It's a journey as you read it, and I find that so interesting. So it really is discerning the logic of the type of love and the type of relationships we fixate on. I think this book also does a really good job of teaching us how to integrate and accept the parts of ourselves that we hide or reject. We have the ability to internalize the belief that we're deserving of love, or we're deserving of the job of our dreams, we're deserving of being an entrepreneur, or having certain things in our life. And I think until we really understand why we reject certain elements of our life and certain elements of our personality and actually dig deep to the core root of that, I think we can't truly understand how to internalize a strong belief that we're deserving until we, tap into those shadows and look at them and kind of work out, actually, where did this come from? I've done a lot of digging this year into certain parts of my personality, which I personally feel like annoy me, or I think, oh gosh, that I wouldn't want that in somebody else. So why is that part of who I am? And how can I expect somebody to love me for that? Or how can I expect somebody to want to be friends with me if that's part of who I am? And actually working out, where does that come from? What caused that? And for me, I think a lot of my quote unquote childhood trauma didn't stem from a turbulent childhood with my parents or anything like that. This book taps into lots of different types of trauma for me, and I think I've been very open about it on all my platforms, really. I was very badly bullied at school, and that had a massive knock-on effect and a huge, impact on everything from my personality to how I interact in relationships, even now, friendships, believing that I'm worthy, my abandonment wounds, how someone treated me in a friendship has impacted how I am in a relationship. So I think there's so much you can learn about yourself from doing the deep dive and the digging, focusing on inner child healing as well. So I really like this element of healing because for me, I think everything sort of stems back to my childhood. And I think if we really deep it, who we are now is impacted by some sort of trauma or impact or upheaval that we had as a child, and that has had an impact on who we are today. So childhood trauma healing and looking into our inner child and who our inner child is integral, I think, for everybody. And I love this book for it. I think it's really mirrored with Shaylena's own personal story navigating her childhood trauma. So she actually had an absent father and a physically and emotionally unavailable mother, which I found really interesting. That was her story and her experience. It didn't necessarily resonate with me, but it could certainly resonate with someone listening to this today who might be in a similar position. So I think anecdotes are a great way to access certain audiences, but they're not the only audience, reading or listening to the book at the end of the day. So yeah, for me, I think it was interesting to see how she dealt with that trauma. She actually turned to substances to kind of fill that void because she didn't have that father figure present, and her mother figure wasn't a strong female in her life either. So that's one sort of avenue, one place you can go. I think for me, I really went in a strange direction, but when I've been sort of digging into what I did, I think I just went really, really flamboyant, and I wanted everybody to know this new version of me and to see it all the time. So that's really where my social media and my blog came from. It was about rewriting how other people viewed me and rewriting that narrative for myself, being in control of that narrative when, I had a group of girls, bully me for so many years that they were in control of who I was. They dictated who I was. So yeah, I just find it really, really interesting. And even reading this book over the summer, I was digging and thinking, oh my God, like there were things that I was doing, in this very early relationship with this guy that I've done in work relationships or I've done in friendships. And it really just gets you to just be more self-aware. And I find it amazing. So it really is untangling yourself from what's familiar and appreciating that it's a slow process. You don't have to read this book, do the exercises and go, done and dusted, brilliant, that's finished, don't need to access that again. I find myself revisiting self-help books all the time. I'm actually at a point now where I'm ready to reread it. I think I'm going to start rereading it in January as a kickstart to the year because I've annotated the hell out of this book and I've got it in my hands right now and it's just the most incredible thing. And I think rereading it, I'm going to access a new version of myself because in the last 6 months, I've changed so much. So yeah, I think when you have a self-help book in your life, it's not something that you read and put on the shelf and never touch again. It's something that you will want to revisit. So I recommend you do that. I recommend that you get yourself a hardback copy or an actual physical copy so you can highlight as you go. Another thing that I love to do is revisit with a new highlighter when I reread the book and see what things I'm picking up, the second or third time around. So I'm going to read a few quotes that I have, post-it noted in my book, because there's a few sections. You can probably hear the rustling of me with this book right now, but I just wanted to read straight from the source because there's so many quotes in this book that just give me the shivers and give me the chills. I'm going to read to you, I think, 5, and then we'll move on to the next book. Otherwise, I'm going to be here forever, guys. So I'll just read this little section here, which says, "Becoming the one and all of my work is a response to the idea that you need to change or fix who you are in order to be loved. This book is about self-acceptance, because even the parts of yourself that you think are hard to love deserve a seat at the table. This is an opportunity for you to leave all the rest at the door. The pushing, the striving, the perfectionism, the struggling to be anyone other than who you are." I absolutely love this because when you're first reading the book, I think it's very easy to think about what you believe self-help to be. And I think a lot of books, I'm not going to name names, but there are a lot of books out there that say, if you don't heal, you'll never be loved or you'll never find love. And this book isn't about that. This book is about self-acceptance, and it's about appreciating everything that you are, even the shadows. And that when you try and be someone that you're not, you're never going to truly be, you're not truly going to be yourself. So if you were to hide those shadows, you're not truly being yourself. You're, being a perfectionized version. I don't even know if that's a word. A perfectionized version of yourself. I just find it so fascinating. Okay, there's another section here which has, oh my gosh, so many quotes. I'm going to read them out because I think they're amazing. So this chapter is called "It Starts With You." And this quote says, "Every single one of us carries a pattern in relationships, and we will continue to act out those patterns in every interaction until we have done the healing work. Our self-worth and self-esteem inform how we show up in all of our relationships." I think this is incredibly true because ultimately you will only get yourself into a relationship or a situation that reflects your self-esteem. And I think that is so true of my most recent, I say most recent, it's not really, but my experience dating someone in June, July, I definitely wasn't in a place of self-worth. And I think I needed to build up my self-esteem. And I think had I done the healing, I probably wouldn't have attracted that experience into my life. So building up your self-esteem and developing a relationship to the parts of yourself you've disowned is all for the purpose of integration. When you're integrated, you are the full embodied expression of your whole heart-centered you. So most of our relationship struggles stem from our insecurities, our fear of using our voice, and our fear of being left unloved or alone. Again, everything is the fear of. I feel like in modern day society, the fear factor is, whacked up to max 100. If you don't have a traditional 9-to-5 job, then you're not working hard enough. You're not a real person working, slogging it out. I feel like there's so much expectation that if it's not done a certain way, then it's not right. And I think a lot of people instill fear in us. I remember being at school and teachers literally telling the class, the entire year, in fact, if you don't go to uni, there are no prospects for you. And thinking back to it now and looking back at that, I think, oh my gosh, I wanted to do uni, but there were so many people that didn't want to do it and were made to feel like they weren't going to be successful in life. And I think that's such a shame that we're forced societally to conform in order to, have a successful life. And I think there are people that have gone to university that don't even use their degrees. And there are people that I have seen and I know that haven't done university but are in a far better financial position have started their own businesses, are entrepreneurial in spirit, and, have basically cultivated success for themselves in a different way. So I just think there's so much fear factor put in our lives, in everything that we do, relationships and business and in money. It's very interesting. I also really love this quote that says, imagine what may be possible in your relationships when you no longer need another person to fill a void or quiet a self-doubt, but rather you seek a relationship for the sole purpose of finding someone to share love with in a reciprocal way. If we rely on a relationship as our main source of energy in the form of validation or security, then the relationship becomes transactional. Chances are we won't be able to fully recognize the red flags. A large part of this feeling secure in ourselves, so we can choose people, places, and environments that resonate with our highest self, rather than falling into the same situations time and time again. Now, that for me sums up what relationships should be in every essence of our lives, from business to personal relationships to our friendships. If we are feeling secure, if we feel validated in ourselves through self-validation and self-security, then we're able to recognize when things aren't right. We don't stay in jobs that don't serve us. We find ourselves in better circumstances because we're aware of who we are, what we need and what we require to feel fulfilled. And in doing so, I think we attract, our tribe into our life through healing. I think we truly do. When we do that deep dive into who we are, our shadows, we are able to find people who align with us on a more healed sense. And I really enjoy this book. I think it's very easy to, adopt I'm trying to think of the word, like a martyrism. I don't even know if that is a word, but sometimes when we put our all into something and it's not right for us or not good for us, we develop this, martyr complex in that, that's how it is, that's all I attract in my life. Every business I set up is unsuccessful because you've had one failure. Actually doing the work and, taking off the martyr mask, as it were, and the martyr archetype, and challenging it and saying, actually, do you know what? Could I be doing a couple of things here that could change the outcome of this next time around if I was to give it another go? I really feel like I could just talk about this book for a whole episode, and I basically have, because I've been rambling and talking for ages. But I just want you guys to just try the book for yourself. It's honestly amazing. Like, I feel like this episode could be sponsored by Becoming the One, but it's not. It's just been a book that's just made me really think and really dig deep. And I think what I want to do in the new year is sit and revisit all the journaling prompts, because I remember writing out some of the things when I was on holiday for my birthday, which seems like such a weird time to be reading a self-help book, but I always find myself very reflective around my birthday. We're transiting that first house, baby. Like, we're working on our identity, we're working on ourselves. And I think that's why we often have a lot of, internal panics when it comes to our birthday, because it's all about who we are as a person, our belief systems, how we feel about where we are in life. Like, it's a very reflective time, and sometimes it can be quite miserable. So having a book like that, for me, it just put all my thoughts into words on a page. And I was reading the book thinking, this is exactly what I need to hear right now. This is exactly what I'm thinking. I just can't express myself like Shailena can. Like, she is so articulate in her expression. And I think that's the beauty really of self-help books. They put things into words that you can't necessarily explain. And that really does bring me on to book number 2, which is very popular amongst the social media community, the influencer content creator community. and it's the book Manifest, which I feel like you guys knew it was coming. I wasn't sure about this book. Initially, I did think it was a bit sort of coffee table, easy read vibes, which I've got nothing against, but I was a bit skeptical. I wasn't sure whether it was going to teach me something new or, really tell me much that I hadn't already read before. And I know, again, that's probably sounds a bit controversial to say that on a podcast episode, but in all honesty, I think it's very easy to consume that type of manifestation content these days for free. So I thought I'd give Manifest a go by Roxy Nafusi because it did have rave reviews, and it does have rave reviews, and I feel like it's a bit like the 2022 answer to The Secret. It's an updated version. I think for me, that's how it felt when I read it. It, revolves and centers around 7 steps or 7 principles to self-development and manifesting, your life and your experience. And Roxy's very honest, and she talks about her own personal experience, talks about having a baby very suddenly with her partner. She also touches on her, hedonistic past, her party ways, and how that was really the focus of her life. And then her life literally did a 180. She had a baby. She started to work on herself and kind of dive into attracting certain things in her life. And she attributes that to manifestation. And I think it was just a very easy book to read. And I think this is why I recommend it, because when you're first starting in the self-help genre, you can pick up a book and it be so detailed and really, really hard to kind of crack that it kind of feels like, is this for me? Can this work for me? Because it's very complex. Sometimes starting with the basics, which is what I would attribute this book to, and I hope that is, said in the nicest possible way, but this book really is the bare bones of manifestation, and it's teaching you the 7 steps, Roxy's 7 steps. I'm going to break them down. I'm not going to go into massive detail, but I am going to say what the 7 steps are, because, if you were to Google the book, you'd find that out anyway. So the first step is be clear in your vision, which I think I wholeheartedly agree with. I think if you don't know who you are and who you want to be, and assign yourself a vision and a goal, where the hell are you going to manifest the life for yourself? Where the hell are you going to take the steps and the action to get to the place if there's no, goal in sight? And allow yourself to change that goal over time. But if you don't know who that person is going to be, if you don't have a vision, it's very hard to work on yourself. It's very hard to know where you're going when you don't know what it is you want. So even just having like one goal in mind. So the second step is to remove fear and doubt. Again, quite self-explanatory in that in order to align yourself and manifest, you do need to remove that feeling that you're not worthy of it happening to you. You're not worthy of the success. Fear is a massive one. And again, it had a lot to play in the other book that I mentioned, Becoming the One. I think when you're fearful of an outcome, or you're fearful of what could happen, it really does hinder your growth in your journey. Aligning your behavior, that's step number 3. Align your actions to the person that you want to become. If you do want to put your focus and say, for example, next year or in the next year, you want to save up enough money to buy a house, align your behavior, look into your budgeting, look into your spending, get your finances on track. If you continue, with your other pursuits and your more, wild and free monetary ways, then maybe that could hinder you. Step number 4, overcome tests from the universe. This was a good chapter for me. I enjoyed this chapter. I found that it made me feel that when we're being tested, when we're being put through our paces, the universe is asking, is this truly what we want? Is this where we want to go? When things get a little bit hard, when there's a resistance in play, sometimes resistance comes into our life because it's actually telling us that we're not supposed to go down this exact path. And I've had it with lots of things before. I've had it with jobs, dream jobs that I thought, were where I was supposed to go. And I got many, many rejections from those types of job opportunities. I think you can attribute redirection to relationships and personal relationships as well. Overcoming the feeling that, do you know what, maybe this relationship isn't good for me right now, perfectly aligns with Becoming the One by Shailena, because we are presented with resistance sometimes to show us that it's not meant for us. Number 5 is embrace gratitude without caveats. And I think that's a nice one. It's an easy one to start with, actually, I think. If we can be grateful for the small things, if we can be aware of our privilege, be aware of our surroundings, then it invites more abundance into our life because we realize how much beauty we have around us. Number 6, this chapter, again, I love this chapter. It was turn envy into inspiration. Now, for me, I think envy can be portrayed in a very negative light, very low vibrational light. And I do believe in that in some instances. But I think that envy sometimes is actually inspiration in disguise. And Roxy actually touches on that. And I love how she puts a more positive spin on it. And she doesn't shame the reader for experiencing envy. She says, remember that inspiration is high vibe. And inspiration derives from envy. Envy shows us what we want. It's a gut instinct. It's a niggle. It makes us think, oh, do you know what? Actually, I do quite like that. I do want that in my life. You witness someone get a dream job, or you witness someone move in with their partner and you think, wow, okay, that kind of gave me a niggle. Maybe that is what I want in my life. And I've had a lot of those this year. And I'm, happy to admit to it. I think that people tend to think of manifestation as a pointless exercise sometimes and view it as an unrealistic attempt to, exercise their wealth or their privilege or their status and just assign it to manifestation, assign manifestation as the cause. But I really think this book is a light-hearted response to self-development. I think with step 7, she says it to trust the universe. And I think maybe someone who hasn't really connected to spirituality before might find that a bit woo-woo or not really know where to start with that. But I guess you can attribute the universe to trusting in you, trusting in yourself, believing that it's possible. And I think ultimately manifestation, or what we attribute manifestation to, does align us to the frequency of such things. Believing in the power of something, sometimes it convinces the brain. It's a nice way to believe in ourselves and to give ourselves that validation. So that really is the 2 books that I'm going to touch on for today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed this episode as well, and it gave you some food for thought for your reading list for either the end of this year or the start of next year. I'm going to be doing this quite often, I think, because I've got quite a few books that I'd love to talk about, but as always, I end up rambling. So I hope this episode hasn't been too waffly or just a real sort of train of thought. I find when I talk about something that I'm passionate about, my thoughts just wander and the episode becomes the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to Staying Sweet, the podcast. If you enjoyed listening, please do leave a rate and review, and I will catch you next week for a new episode.